Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest iteration of the National Prison Debate League. My name is Daniel Troop. I'm the founder and executive director, and we are proud to be in partnership with Vermont and launching our newest team, the Con-Tradictors, in an epic debate against Wake Forest University on an important policy subject that I'm going to let the debaters enlighten you on. And here to lead you through today's program is your moderator, my friend and colleague, our events director, friend PDL, and a very experienced debater and restorative justice practitioner, Mr. David Myland. David?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for taking the time this afternoon to tune in to this not only monumental event for Vermont, but for all of those incarcerated around the country. Let's prove today that we can argue without the use of violence. So, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, supporters, honored guests. You are all about to witness the unforgettable display of both intellectual ability and social diplomacy in action, as our two amazing teams from the University of Wake Forest and our newest NPDL team from Vermont, the Con-Tradictors. Let's give them a round of applause. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get right into it. Resolved, the U.S. should adopt the Norwegian model of corrections. The incarcerated intellectuals of the Con-Tradictors team from Vermont will argue in the affirmative, supporting this resolution, while the Wake Forest Demon Deacons will argue in the negative position, refuting the affirmative's case. Each debater will be judged upon the following criteria: analysis, reasoning, evidence, organization, and of course, delivery. So without further ado, I would actually like to introduce three very distinguished judges that are here for our panel today. First, our chief judge, former director of debate at the University of Georgia, we have Ed Panetta. Second, we have the director of debate for Emory University and the coach of the Copeland winner for the top-ranked debate team in 2024, and the coach of the top speaker at the 2024 National Debate Tournament. Wow, lots of accomplishments here from Michaela Nelson. Thank you. Last but not least, coming up in the rear is our last judge, Mr. Vincent Lee, the debate coach at Binghamton University. Let's put our hands together for Vincent. Now it's my honor to introduce the two coaches for today's teams. First, we have Justin Green, who is the coach for the Wake Forest University Demon Deacons. And none other than NPDL's own Mr. Daniel Troop is the coach for our Con-Tradictors. Let's give him a warm up. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, as today's moderator, I will introduce the debaters individually, and they will also adhere to their specific time limits. A digital timer will be displayed on screen, and speakers' microphones will be muted if they exceed their time limits. At the conclusion of the debate, our judges will tally up each team's cumulative point totals to determine the winner of today's contest. Gentlemen, pay attention to the time on both sides. We would not like to see you forfeit your speech because you went over, so pay attention. With all this being said, it is now time to expand our minds and start today's debate. Presenting the affirmative team's first constructive argument, timers, he has 7 to 9 minutes. Michael Plasky hails from Fall River, Massachusetts. He has a bachelor's degree in communications from UMass Amherst. He also has a master's. Why debate matters to Michael? Debate matters because we should all be able to argue for ourselves and what we believe in. It also allows us to understand that there are different opinions, points of view than our own, and everyone has their own perspective. There is a room full of them all. Without further ado, Michael Plasky, timer 7 to 9 minutes.
Will I see that in here? The current state of criminal justice and incarceration in the United States is abysmal. Prisons are inhumane and overcrowded. A successful system of criminal justice is defined as one that protects the public and deters future crime, and our current system does neither. Prisons are essentially human warehouses where inmates are pushed further away from society and deeper into a life of criminality. A Norwegian approach to incarceration, which is one focused on rehabilitation, could save our country's crumbling system. The US incarcerates more people per capita than almost all Western European countries and Canada, and many of those imprisoned will be released and rearrested within 3 years, according to Levin 2002. Our country makes up 25% of the world prison population, despite having only 5% of the actual population. Obviously, something is wrong. This is in large part due to a broken system, one that has swelled and morphed to have unintended side effects and consequences. A system that punishes an inmate long after their sentence is completed. A system that ultimately pushes an inmate further out of society and into a life of criminality. Thankfully for us, there is a proven model of criminal justice that saved another country from the very same issues of high crime and recidivism. A system that is focused on rehabilitation instead of punishment. A system that produces a more capable, law-abiding, productive citizen after incarceration. A system already working both abroad and here at home. By adopting the Norwegian approach of rehabilitation and putting a focus on education and the principle of normality, we could rescue our failing system and set a new course for criminal justice and incarceration in this country. Life behind bars in America is so vastly different from the life you live every day. It is both inhumane and dehumanizing. Because punishment in the US has expanded from the sentence. The prisoner suffers not only the time served, but what the time served does to them, removing them from society, reinforcing bad habits, and making reintegration nearly impossible and thus recidivism inevitable. Norway has all but eliminated these problems. While there are many differences between the United States and Norway, what we are arguing doesn't have anything to do with the cultural or geographic differences. It has to do with human beings and their psychology. Education is beneficial no matter where you physically are. Mimicking and practicing living a successful life will better prepare you for exactly that. The amenities get the headlines, but the real key to the success of their methodology is the underlying philosophy. Inmates lose their liberty, but not their humanity and dignity. The principle of normality Norway uses is the basis of the treatment of their prisoners. The principle implies that execution of the prison sentence must be as normal as possible within a secure framework. It ensures all prisoners are entitled to participate in education and encourages hope and change within the inmate. By ensuring the sentence mimics and is similar to a successful life lived on the outside, a successful model is established. When compared to the harsh and inhumane and unfamiliar incarceration system in the United States, it is no wonder their system has reduced recidivism and ours unintentionally encourages it. Prison in the US instigates a dangerous separation of the inmate from society, while Norway's acknowledges that progression through a sentence should be aimed at returning to the community, that prisoners are viewed as members of society temporarily removed. The Norwegian system recognizes the difficulties offenders face upon returning to community and how it's made worse by a closed system. This is exactly why their method encourages change and why they end up importing medical, educational, and employment services from the community. This not only stimulates the local economy, but it allows inmates to build relationships and create connections to strive post-release. Compare this to the facility I am speaking to you from, which upon completing your sentence will drive you to the end of the hill we reside on and kick you out of the car into an unknown town. In the Norwegian system, prison is not a time or place set apart from the community. Instead, it is a place where prisoners are drawn back into a society against which they had previously set themselves against as aggressors. It allows them to establish the tools and relationships to successfully assimilate back into society. One main thing the principle of normality combats is the dangerous us versus them mentality prevalent throughout US prisons, a mentality that isolates prisoners and ex-prisoners from society more than any prison walls. When prisoners, no matter where they are geographically, feel they are not a part of the us of society, what motivation do they have to follow the laws and norms of a society that has rejected them? As one prisoner recently said to me, Michael, that's why I keep coming back. I never fit in out there with them. Inmates see no point in attempting to change when they feel so apart from. The normality principle removes the isolating line that our punitive system exasperates. By eliminating the us versus them, community is cultivated. And just like a homeowner takes better care than a renter does, people who feel a sense of belonging are less likely to engage in destructive behavior. Norway's system also understands that this principle needs to work within a secure framework. The principle of normality is operated within a closed to open system. Inmates start in harsher, more restrictive prisons and earn their way to less restrictive institutions. Good behavior is rewarded and thus reinforced. This framework ensures prison is not just some spa experience, it is more along the lines of a retributive rehabilitation that is still an aspect of punishment involved. Another critical aspect of Norway's rehabilitative approach necessary to adopt is their focus on education. Education is a driving force in deterring criminals and reducing recidivism. Despite almost all data supporting this fact, education within the US prison system isn't stressed. Many inmates have experienced a difficult upbringing, weak connection to working life, poor finances, homelessness, substance abuse, and little to no education. The inmate population is a complex group afflicted by a multitude of social problems, almost all of which education can help alleviate. Prison represents a unique point where people suffering from many of these problems can be helped and then carry out change themselves, whereas the problems may be too vast or complicated to treat at origin. As students pursuing higher education, you can most likely attest to the fact that knowledge is power. A Princeton study revealed that 19% of inmates in the US are completely illiterate, while 40% are functionally illiterate, yet only 33% of inmates receive any education. Many of the men and women in our prison system are unable to function in day-to-day life like you or I are. There's a massive need to acquire the base knowledge and skills to live a normal life. The inmates have little to no ability or skills to cope or deal with the life they live, let alone to pull them out of their situation, so they then can't follow the rules and laws of a society they don't fit into. A study done by Coyle Wright found that the higher a person's education, the less likely they are to be arrested. And a separate study done by Hendricks found that recidivism decreases as education increases, and those with no GED are the most likely to be rearrested more than once. What all these studies show is education works to deter crime. And finally, a RAND study found that for every $1 spent on education in prison, $4 to $5 is saved in recidivism costs. Put simply, studies have found that educating the inmate will both reduce future criminal probability and save money. There's also the added benefit of producing a more capable and skilled person into our society that can have a more positive impact. On top of all these benefits, educating the II inspires them to have hope, to strive for and want more for themselves and their lives. A study done by Cognate Education highlighted this fact by finding that education in prison has contributed to social benefits, self-determination, and accountability by enabling ex-prisoners to improve both mastery and self-esteem. The benefits around education transform and change the learner, showing that learning becomes something more than just the acquisition of pure knowledge and skill. If America were to adopt the Norwegian system and put the same focus on education, we could see the same benefits. We have the opportunity to not only reduce crime and save money, but also to create a more prepared, skilled person for re-entry into our society. Beyond the quantifiable economic savings of reducing recidivism, I don't believe we can put a price on the benefit to inmate and society. Can we even quantify the human cost of this? The adoption of the Norwegian system of incarceration is largely a shift from an ideology of punishment to rehabilitation. While the circumstances surrounding the problems of crime and recidivism may be different, the problems themselves are the same. Norway's focus on rehabilitation through education and the principle of normality has borne better results than our failing punitive system. Something must be done about the state of incarceration in this country. In our current system, even if one can rise above and find success in the harsh, inhumane environment in American prisons, it is so vastly different from life on the outside that success is impossible to translate post-release. I have a bachelor's degree. I've been to 7 countries and went 32 years never seeing the inside of a prison. Sitting at an $87,000 a year college, I can see how it may be easy to write off the incarcerated population, because I've sat in those chairs as well. However, I can promise you that these men and women are worth this change. We have a unit at this very facility that is saving the facility hundreds of thousands of dollars annually due to these principles. The jail is able to leave the unit unstaffed by leveraging the principle of normality within a secure framework. This very debate we are taking part in are these principles at work. You are actively taking part in exactly what you are arguing against. If we can change something for the better, it is worth changing. Adoption of the Norwegian system will make incarceration in this country better for the inmate, the prisons, and for our society at large. It is an answer, a solution for the problems of high recidivism rates that also make the whole system more humane and transformative. When something is broken in this country, you fix it. Luckily for us, we have a proven fix. Change is difficult, yet our country is littered with moments where difficult change was a necessity. Moments like women earning the right to vote, or the integration of schools during the civil rights movement. Moments that may have gone against public sentiment or the thoughts and beliefs of part of our country. Moments that required investment and took work. We have found ourselves at another one of these moments, and just like then, we must do the tough thing and change for the better. Let's take advantage of a rare opportunity where the benefits are so evident and the answers so clear. Let's do the right thing and implement the Norwegian approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Moving right along, providing the first cross-examination for the negative team, timers 1 to 3 minutes. We have Mr. Cole Wolf hailing from the Bronx, New York, by way of the Deacon Demons of Wake Forest.
Can you hear me okay? Wonderful. I'm getting some head nods. I wish I was from the Bronx. Let's start with cross-sects. I want to get to the heart of this issue. You mentioned two really important things in that first speech. Let's start with education, right? A lot of your first speech kind of demonstrated that there will be cultural shifts required for the Norwegian model to work in the first place. A couple quotes from your speech were education focus, an us versus them dichotomy, and an ideology shift broadly. How then can you claim that culture isn't important to change, as you did in the first minutes of your speech?
Can you point that specifically out?
Yeah, absolutely. A quote from the first minute of the speech was that it doesn't have anything to do with cultural or geographic differences. I'm starting on that first one. Just so we can have the debate, is culture important, yes or no?
Yeah, culturally, I was speaking to more the norms of the society over the actual like
Yeah.
culture. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Second, let's kind of talk about these geographic differences. Let's start small at first, right? Given that Norway is about the size of New Mexico, but triple its population density, how can we imagine rural areas achieving comparable levels of the community prison integration that you're discussing?
I think with the rise of telehealth and also with there being local communities still here to leverage, like I think Springfield has a population of like under a couple thousand people, and there's a Turning Point recovery program here. I believe with both the advent and increase in telehealth and web communications, and then also the local community, that there would be enough to support the community resolve.
Okay, so geographical differences would play a role as well.
I don't. No, I don't believe so. I believe that geographically, it doesn't matter where the prison is because we can import via telehealth, via web communications, or the local community.
Okay, that makes sense. I imagine that telehealth wouldn't be free though, right? In the eyes of the affirmative, what cuts to state budgets are acceptable? Should we start with education, environmental protection, infrastructure? What are we feeling?
I think, as I pointed out, with the savings that this unit at this facility offers, you could utilize the money already allocated to the Department of Corrections budget to support these
How do you think
programs.
this would scale up nationally? Would this be kind of like a one-to-one dollars to donut situation? Do you think there would be any increase in state budgets to accommodate this?
There may have to be initially, but eventually, I think that basic economic understanding shows that I believe the study showed that a dollar investment in education is a $4 savings in recidivism. But it also can be done without a large upfront investment, as it has been done at our facility.
Gotcha. I'm glad we're able to clear that up. I'll yield the last 30 seconds of my time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Wolf, who is also from Edmond, Oklahoma, by way of the Bronx, by way of the Demon Deacons. Presenting the negative team's first constructive argument, timers, they have 7 to 9 minutes. Now we actually have the individual coming from the Bronx, by the way of the Demon Deacons, Nasha Brown. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, I'm Nishaya, and here's why we should not adopt a Norwegian prison system. Firstly, Norway is not America. We as a country cannot and will not be able to successfully adopt a Norwegian prison system. Historically, the US prison system has been disciplinary, emphasizing retribution and public safety. High incarceration rates are linked to socioeconomic disparities, systemic racism, and tough on crime policies. Norway emphasizes rehabilitation, low recidivism rates, and humane conditions, but it operates in a fundamentally different societal context. Lower crime rates, a smaller population, and robust social welfare systems. It's easy to want these policies for the United States, especially for someone currently experiencing the prison system. But once you look into it further, you can see why the adoption of Norway's prison system isn't practical. The United States has mechanisms for reform and innovation that are aligned with its distinct social and legal framework on both state and federal levels. According to a 2024 report by Drexel University's Dornsife School of Public Health, New Jersey's 2017 cash bail reform successfully reduced incarceration rates without increasing crime. This demonstrates how state level innovations within the United States system can drive meaningful change, negating the need for wholesale adoption of foreign models like Norway's prison system. Initiatives like the First Step Act, as outlined by the Federal Bureau of Prisons, focuses on reducing recidivism through evidence-based programs and reentry support. They assess the recidivism risks of incarcerated individuals and group them in different programs based on their needs. Many US prisons have introduced vocational training, educational programs, and reentry preparation to reduce recidivism. For example, BARD Prison Initiative offers college-level courses to inmates with proven success in post-incarceration outcomes. Programs like Restorative Justice in Colorado allow victims and offenders to engage in dialogue and work toward rehabilitation within the U.S. framework. Since 2020, we've seen a decrease in incarceration rates, which means the approach the U.S. is taking is working. With that being said, there are a few reasons why the U.S. should not adopt a Norwegian prison model. Number one, the Norwegian prison system will be 3 times more expensive than the current prison system. According to First Step Alliance, a nonprofit organization, Norway spends $93,000 for each incarcerated individual, while the U.S. spends $31,000. If we were to spend that amount on the incarcerated individuals, it would be coming out of the taxes of citizens, meaning other allocations of that money, such as education, which you guys did highlight, plays a role in reducing recidivism rates and crime rates, and public safety, health, and human services would be taken away from. Yet, these are the very programs that address the root causes of crime, such as poverty and lack of opportunity. Depleting their budgets will not only perpetuate a cycle of higher crime rates, exacerbating the very issue we aim to solve. And let's be real, the US is not going to take money away from military or police budgets, making it even less feasible to fund this system. 2, as I mentioned earlier, this is not Norway. Norway has a population of 5.52 million, while the United States has a population of 334.9 million. According to the World Population Review and World Prison Brief, Norway has a total population of around 5.5 million, and its incarceration rate is one of the lowest globally at 56 per 100,000 people, with only about 3,000 incarcerated individuals nationwide. In contrast, the US has over 1.9 million incarcerated individuals, with an incarceration rate of 639 per 100,000 people. This scale disparity makes implementing Norway's individualized resource-intensive model far more challenging in the US. Also, their prison systems are integrated into urban areas, making more access to social services like mental health care and education more feasible. In contrast, most US prisons are located in rural areas, far from the infrastructure needed to provide similar services. The U.S. Department of Justice highlights that many American prisons are located in rural or remote areas, often to reduce costs or due to local economic dependencies. These locations make access to comprehensive rehabilitative services far more difficult. Logistically, how do we replicate this model across a nation as large and diverse as the U.S.? Norway's intricate prison model purposely houses them in the middle of the city so that they can better integrate into society. And also so they can have various sources such as teachers come in and teach the incarcerated individuals. In the United States, we would not have to only pay these teachers who already don't get paid enough to come up to these rural areas to teach, but also pay for their transportation costs. It isn't feasible or realistic in this society. My third and last point is, even if we could implement Norway's system, it raises an uncomfortable question. Does this approach apply to all offenders? How do we get everyone on the same page? Norway's system treats even its most heinous criminals, such as Anders Behring Breivik, with the same rehabilitative focus. Anders Behring Breivik was responsible for killing 77 people, most of the victims being children. According to a recent 2024 article from Newsweek, not only is he eligible for parole, but he gets to live in a 2-story unit equipped with a fitness room, kitchen, and TV lounge with access to an Xbox and pretty views. How would you get politicians and even the general public to adopt a system where this could be a possibility for many of the incarcerated individuals who've committed heinous crimes such as this? How would the family members of the victims feel if the killer of their child or loved one is given freedom and a life while their child's life was taken away? In the US, this would mean offering the same level of care and rehabilitation to mass murderers, rapists, and pedophiles. Can we truly expect public support for a system that appears to offer compassion to the most egregious offenders? A Pew Research Center survey found that 60% of Americans support the death penalty for murderers, reflecting a punitive approach to justice. So the idea of a reformative approach to every incarcerated individual would face widespread opposition and backlash. Not only that, but any model that appears to prioritize the well-being of violent offenders over their victims could erode public trust in the system. Adopting Norway's prison system in the US is not only prohibitively expensive, but also logistically impractical and culturally divisive. I think instead we should focus on improving our own system through reforms such as the ones I suggested earlier and even the very one we're a part of right now, that address the unique challenges of our society. This will allow us to make progress without ignoring the realities of our size, structure, and values.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And as we move right along, we're gonna bring up our next individual. He hails from Hebron, Maine. His academic goals are simple. He wants to get his high school diploma and get a degree in communications. And why debate matters for this individual? Well, this debate is a part of a shift, he believes, a shift in the right direction for everyone. So he's certainly glad to be a part of that. With that said, Mr. Richard Goyette, you have 1 to 3 minutes timers for your cross-examination.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you for being a part of this, and I'm truly glad to be a part of it as well. So the Norwegian system is ultimately a rehabilitation approach. Do you not agree with that?
No, I agree with it, and I think it's a great idea. But realistically, it cannot be implemented across the United States. I know you guys have mentioned individual states doing this, but what we're arguing here is that it would be a widespread thing across the United States, and we're arguing that that just wouldn't be possible financially, and just with the infrastructure of the United States as a whole.
Norway didn't always support the rehabilitation part of it, but change over time did occur. Do you really believe that America can change to that?
Um, No, I think we're pretty set in our ways as we can just, see from current issues going on. A lot of people just like we're not changing in ideologies, none of that. So I don't think we'll be as open again as a country to changing. I do think individual states like California with the San Quentin's like how they adopted this the Norwegian model in San Quentin prison. I think individually because maybe individual states still agree with that and governors. But as the US, no. I think the ideals are pretty set.
So can you agree that social reform is not easy?
Yes, I can agree. And I think
Okay, so there are
it'll
oh,
take a
go-
lot of agreeing and stuff. Like, yeah, it's not easy.
And this country has been littered with moments where social reform had to change, correct?
Yes.
So money isn't everything. Should we be worried about treating someone with humanity? Is the cost really
I
that?
think Yeah, I think saying money isn't everything is easier said than done because it's quite literally part of everything. Everything systemic has to do with money, social class. So just realistically, like, yeah, no, like I think we can't just negate and not think about money in situations like these, especially if we're trying to change like recidivism rates and crime rates. A big part of that is funding for education. And without that, the cycle is just gonna continue. So I don't think we can negate money in this situation.
Well, I'm gonna use my last time with this. Can you agree that are we promoting humanity, which is Wake Forest motto?
Yes, we are promoting humanity, which is why we think taking funding from education and health systems will do more harm than good. Unfortunately, we don't have unlimited money in funding. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we don't have unlimited funding.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, most of these opinions do not reflect the individual's personal opinion. Just putting that out there for everybody to see. With that said, let's move right on to the Demon Deacon's first negative rebuttal. Timers 4 to 6 minutes. Hailing from Aiken, South Carolina, we have Mr. Caden Hart.
You guys hear me okay? Though I agree that the US prison system is undeniably flawed in many ways, as Nishaya mentioned, replacing it with the Nordic model is simply not feasible within the context of American economic structure, infrastructure, rates of gun violence, and most significantly, the prevailing public attitude towards crime. While the Nordic system has shown some positive outcomes in Norway, the reality is that the United States is not Norway. In fact, the two countries are fundamentally different in several critical ways that entirely eliminate the possibility of implementing the Nordic prison system in the US. The population of the United States is roughly 62 times larger than the population of Norway, and the US is about 30 times as large. The two countries were established under vastly different economic contexts. Norway's smaller, wealthier economy, supported by high taxes and a smaller population, makes their expensive prison system a viable choice for their government. But the United States has a significantly larger and more complex economy than Nordic countries. This disparity makes it impossible to allocate enough funding to establish a Nordic rehabilitative prison system in the United States, where the infrastructure would have to be redone entirely in order to support such a system. According to City Journal, current tax revenues in the US are already insufficient to cover existing government spending. If the US were to adopt the Nordic model of prison reform, it would have to divert funding from other critical areas such as healthcare, education, and public safety. These programs have been proven to address root causes of crime like poverty, lack of opportunity, and unemployment. According to a study by the University of Michigan, increased investment in public schools pays off through reductions in adult crime. The study found that students who attended better funded schools are 15% less likely to be arrested through age 30. And the reductions in adult crime alone generate social savings that exceed the cost to the government of increasing school funding. To implement a similar system, the US would need to raise taxes or significantly reallocate funds, which would be politically unpopular and economically destabilizing. This is especially true given that the US already struggles with funding social safety nets, making the prospect of such a large prison reform unrealistic without major systemic changes, which the United States cannot afford. Another reason why the Nordic system will not work in the United States is that our infrastructure is entirely different from that of Nordic countries. The rehabilitative model of the Nordic prison system allows for incarcerated people to gradually reintegrate into society. As their sentence nears its end, those who are incarcerated are afforded more privileges, eventually leaving the prison to work in a nearby town. This is simply not possible in the United States. Unlike Nordic countries, in the US, prisons are primarily built in rural areas, not nearby town centers. Integrating the Nordic prison system would not only require government funding that we don't have in the US, but would also require us to entirely reorganize our infrastructure, rebuilding prisons closer to town centers and leaving the existing prisons empty. If you're suggesting telemedicine as a means of reintegration, that is simply not what the Norwegian prison model suggests. This is a logistical nightmare and one we cannot afford. The next issue I would like to address is a vastly different nature of crime in the US. The gun violence issue in the United States is virtually non-existent in Nordic countries, where strict gun ownership restrictions forbid anyone to own a gun who is below a certain age, has a criminal record, a history of domestic violence, alcohol use disorder, or substance use disorder, a mental illness, or depression. There is no denying that obtaining a firearm is much simpler in the United States, leading to high rates of gun violence. Despite high gun ownership in some Nordic countries, gun violence remains low. For example, in 2020, Norway had only 2 gun homicides, while the US had 19,384. These statistics demonstrate that the nature of crime in the US makes the possibility of a rehabilitative model impossible. We cannot copy Norway's solution to crime in the United States when we face issues with crime that are fundamentally different from Norway. Lastly, we cannot instate the Norwegian prison system in the United States because the prevailing attitudes regarding crime and punishment are so deeply ingrained in our society that implementing this new system would require a fundamentally different view of crime and punishment, one rooted in retribution rather than rehabilitation. For decades, US policies have emphasized punishment as the primary deterrent to crime, with public support often leaning towards stricter sentencing and harsher prison conditions. Many Americans associate justice with penalties that reflect the severity of the offense, rather than focusing on efforts to reform individuals and reintegrate them into society. By contrast, the Nordic model is built on the belief that every individual is capable of change and that a supportive, rehabilitative approach is more effective at preventing future crimes. Implementing such a system in the US would require a seismic cultural shift, a rethinking of how we view justice, accountability, and the role of incarceration in society. However, changing deeply entrenched beliefs and attitudes would take years, if not decades, of public education, political advocacy, and societal dialogue. Without this groundwork, attempting to replicate the Nordic system would likely face the widespread resistance and fail to gain the necessary support to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you for that. All right, moving right along. Next up, we have our first rebuttal from the affirmative team. Timers, it's a 4 to 6 minute speech presentation. Hailing from Rural Valley, Pennsylvania, enjoy studying just to study. How many times do you hear that? This man loves education. And he wanted us to let y'all know that there is a fun fact. He is the father of Viviana. And he also wants y'all to know that all points of view matter and all points of view should be heard. With that said, please welcome up Jesse Waltonville.
Thank you for doing this, everybody. So I'm going to address a number of the problems that our opponents are raising today. But first, I think it is important to understand the human cost that we are discussing. The best way I can think to do that is with an example. So let's take a typical American university. How about Wake Forest? The student population of Wake Forest is approximately 5,500 people. According to the article, The Prisoner is One of Us by Emily Labuta of the Emory International Law Review, our national incarceration rate is about 0.7%, and our recidivism rate is about 70%, meaning statistically speaking, about 38 people you walk past every single day will go to prison at some point in their life. And of those 38, 26 of them are going to return to prison within 5 years. Makes you wonder who you're partying with on Saturdays, doesn't it? To quote Warden Norton and Stephen King's Rita Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption, only one way to spend the taxpayers' hard-earned money when it comes to prisons: more bars, more walls, and more guards. Ironically, in the 1950s and 60s, when that story takes place, that was not the usual way of thinking. When the Quakers formed the first prisons in America, according to Martha Duncan's book, Romantic Outlaws and Beloved Prisons, they assumed that the offender is someone who erred, but is capable of change. The period of incarceration can be viewed as a time to effect interventions that may bring about law-abiding behavior, or in simpler terms, rehabilitation. In Race to Incarceration, Marie Mora writes, in 1968, 48% of the public thought the primary purpose of prison was for rehabilitation, while 72% thought people thought that it should be rehabilitation. That was just 57 years ago. In the 1970s, a Texas federal court declared in Liam versus Ligumore, rehabilitation must be the overriding goal of the correctional institutions. Yes, that came from Texas, the Hang'em High State. It wasn't until the 1980s and the 1990s, in our lifetime, that these changes occurred during the beginning of the war on crime. If it can change once, it will change again. The cost of lost wages of incarcerated people, while combined with the reduction in lifetime earnings after their release, according to Tara Hayes, is estimated at $300 billion. Again, $300 billion. Take that as a tax furl, and how much are we making then that we can put back into prisons to make them even better? Once convicted of a misdemeanor, such as 13 VSA 2013, this is a real crime, painting or disguising horses, citizens are barred from obtaining more than 1,000 occupational licenses. A felony conviction will increase that to more than 3,000 licenses. I ask you, how is a person supposed to return to their normal way of life that they had before incarceration when they can't do the job they were doing and losing hundreds, if not even thousands of dollars a year? No wonder that they all return to a life of crime. As one of those individuals in prison who acknowledges their guilt, I understand that punishment is a necessary part of imprisonment, but it is beyond me how rehabilitation isn't more of a priority. According to Sarah Payne, writing for the Princeton Legal Journal, for every dollar spent on prison education, we save $4 in recidivism costs in the initial 3 years of release. Imagine how much beer you could buy if you were spending $1 for every 4. That should be a no-brainer. But in Vermont, they are closing vocational trainings, and the Community College of Vermont, who is in charge of our higher education, only offers a couple classes each semester. Nearly every day, I talk to people who wish to take a college course or a vocational class, but there just isn't enough classes to go around. If someone like me or any of my teammates, or anybody for that matter, wishes an education, DOC should bend over backwards to make that happen. Education is the silver bullet. It is the only way to permanently change a person's behavior. That is worth the proverbial blood, sweat, and tears. It is certainly worth a few bucks. In educating inmates to a new vocation or just a new way of thinking, we vastly increase the chances of them succeeding after release. This is how you make ex-inmates, and every ex-inmate is a victory for all of us. I grew up in a rural area, and I can tell you without a doubt that we would have benefited greatly from having motivated individuals who would have loved to have come to our community and done work, been a mechanic, done anything, carpentry, anything like that, that we could easily train people here in these prisons. So to say that rural areas would not benefit from this is ludicrous. I mean, beyond ludicrous. All right, in closing, change can be difficult. But fortunately, we do have a roadmap to fix our system. It is the Norwegian system. And if all of that isn't enough, how about this? According to a US News and World Report in 2023, areas with an increased incarceration area have as much as an 120% increase in child mortality. We're killing children.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've now reached the halfway point to our debate, which means it is now about to get interesting. The late rounds always bring the heavy punches. With that said, leading us in opening up the second round by presenting the negative team's second constructive argument. Timers, we have 6 to 8 minutes for this presentation. From Arlington, Virginia, Mr. Devlin Brindle.
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me all right?
Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Devlin Brindle. I want to begin by recognizing what a privilege it is to be here with you all today. The stance of my classmates and myself is simple. The United States is not Norway. Due to financial concerns, cultural differences, and a lack of public support, it is impossible for the US to adopt the Norwegian prison model. Norway's prison system is built on several key elements that contribute to its success, many of which would be difficult, if not impossible, to implement in the United States. It would be ignorant to ignore Norway's societal context, which allows for a more rehabilitative approach. Their approach to the prison system is made possible by their lower crime rates, smaller population size, and robust social welfare programs. At this time, the United States is nowhere near where it would need to be to implement the approach presented by the affirmative team. The first hurdle the United States would face if it attempted to adopt a Norwegian approach would be cost. As emphasized by my partners, Norway spends an average of $91,000 per inmate per year, whereas the United States spends an average of $31,000, a drastic third of what Norway spends. Considering the fact that the average yearly salary in the United States is $66,000, according to the Social Security Administration, spending $91,000 a year per inmate would be met with great resistance from taxpayers and legislators. If the United States were to undergo an extensive prison reform process as proposed, the funding would likely be pulled from public education budgets and other avenues focused on health and human services. In a 2022 study by the University of Michigan, researchers found it is important to invest in education because early investments in children's lives can prevent contact with the adult criminal justice system and overall reduce criminal activity, a positive benefit for society. Diverting funds away from already struggling schools could have detrimental effects on graduation rates, crime rates, and incarceration rates. First Step Alliance, a nonprofit organization focused on teaching financial literacy to those released, found that a key reason Norway's system succeeds is due to its widespread support from citizens, a crucial aspect that would be impossible for the US to achieve if health and human service budgets were impacted. According to a 2023 Gallup poll, 58% of Americans believe our criminal justice system is not tough enough. Imagine trying to convince that 58% that the real solution is more leniency. It's essential to recognize Norway can only afford to spend so much per inmate because they have one of the smallest populations in the world. Even if the United States released all nonviolent offenders, our prison population would remain far larger than that of Norway's. Let me remind you that based on land area, Norway is about the size of New Mexico, just one of our 50 states. It is as simple as this. The United States is not Norway, and just because their approaches work for them does not mean it would work for us. My partner also expressed concern about implementing a more lenient Norwegian system, worried whether or not lenient policies would apply to all offenders. I believe this concern would be top of mind for most Americans if they heard about this proposal. The Prison Journaling Project notes that there are currently 53,000 people serving life without parole sentences, and about 75% of those serving LWOPs were convicted of murder. Would all these cases be retried since Norway does not have life without parole? Rather than serving life sentences, Norway follows a maximum sentencing of 21 years, which can be extended by increments of 5 years at a time if it is believed that the person is still a credible danger to society. These short sentencings would receive great pushback. The same 2023 Gallup poll I mentioned earlier found that 55% of Americans still support the death penalty. I mention this not to argue in support of or against the death penalty, but to emphasize the deep-rooted beliefs held by a majority of Americans that directly contradict the plan put forth by the affirmative team. I would now like to bring your attention back to the case of Anders Breivik. In 2011, Breivik took the lives of 77 innocent people, the majority of which were teenagers and children. If Breivik were to have committed this heinous act in the United States, he likely would have been sentenced to a life in prison without parole or even the death penalty, a conviction that most Americans would find fitting given the severity of his actions. This is drastically different from Norway's approach. When Breivik was found guilty, he was sentenced to a maximum of 21 years with the opportunity to apply for parole after completing 10 years. In 2014, Breivik threatened to go on a hunger strike if his demands were not met. According to AP News, his demands included a bigger gym, an updated gaming system, and a sofa. Today, according to ABC News, Breivik resides in a spacious two-story complex. There, he has his own Xbox, pet parakeets, numerous armchairs, a home gym, and even black and white posters of the Eiffel Tower. Such a lenient approach would be unthinkable in the United States and would not receive public support. That is because, unlike Norway, our government does not compromise with those who employ violence. In 2016, the Los Angeles Times reported that Breivik had successfully sued the Norwegian government. Breivik argued that he was a victim of human rights abuse. A few of his complaints included that he had to use plastic utensils and was not allowed to communicate with his sympathizers. Despite the fact that their system focuses on rehabilitation, Breivik has not been reformed, nor has he shown any personal growth. Prosecutor Holder Courtaltier, the state prosecutor, in his unsuccessful 2022 parole hearing, emphasized that Breivik has never demonstrated regret, claiming that instead he's been able to take advantage of his hearings, using them as PR stunts. Breivik's case is just one example of how a lenient justice system can be taken advantage of. Today, as we evaluate whether or not the United States should adopt a Norwegian model, it is crucial we recognize the gaps in their system that allow for exploitation by people like Breivik. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devlin. Moving right along, Presenting the affirmative team's second constructive argument. Timers 6 to 8 minutes for this presentation. We have Mr. Josh Bedard, AKA Shazam, hailing from everywhere. So watch out, people. Fun fact and why debate matters for Josh. This debate matters because there needs to be a change in Americans' prison system. Our leaders need to do something. And with that said, Josh is going to try to convince you why.
Sitting here segregated 815 miles away from Wake Forest, getting to debate one of the best colleges in the country shows us right now good education in prison is possible. I'm going to catch a felony right now by stealing your school's motto, speak humanity and promote humanity. I'm lucky DOC hasn't shipped me yet 1,378 miles away for profit to warehouse me and others like they do. See DOC Directive 371-22. Every day I see inhumane conditions, which equal lawsuits, which means money. We say we are the greatest country in the world, but we have the highest recidivism rates, and we are spending billions to keep people segregated with no education or rehabilitation upon return to society. According to Tara O'Neill at the AmericanNationForum.org, we have a 70% recidivism rate. By building so many prisons so fast, we have created a climate in which is now in nearly everyone's interest to argue for prison terms that are longer, tougher, harsher, because only through longer, tougher, harsher terms can the prison boom perpetuate itself. And self-perpetuation is where the money is. Americans have learned to profit from every kind of prison but an empty one. And this alone is incentive enough to keep prison populations growing. This was written by Joseph T. Hallahan, a Pulitzer Prize winner. The book was called Going Up the River 25 years ago. Spending money on incarcerated intellectuals as in education and rehabilitation will save the taxpayers in the long run because it decreases the recidivism rate and naturally increases the tax base. This is written by Emory Law by Emily Labuda, and she states that the Norwegian public largely supports rehabilitation-based policies, believing that helping prisoners reintegrate into society benefits everyone. Norwegian prisoners prioritize rehabilitation over punishment. Incarcerated individuals have access to educational, vocational, and training and psychological counseling to help them reintegrate into society upon release. Norwegian prisons, such as the Halden prison, are designed to be as humane as possible and supportive as possible. Cells are more like small apartments with access to communal spaces, fitness facilities, and recreational opportunities. Restorative justice plays a key role in Norway's criminal justice system. Incarcerated individuals are encouraged to take responsibility for their actions, and there is a focus on repairing the harm caused to victims in the community. In the U.S., many released prisoners struggle to reintegrate into society due to a lack of resources, discrimination, and the stigma of incarceration. Norway provides extensive support to incarcerated individuals. Emily Labuda from Emory Law also states that many Americans get their understanding of prisons from the media portrayal of the national legal system. For most Americans, it may be difficult to conceive of a prison system that does not rely almost purely on punitive measures, but rather attends to the rights and rehabilitation of incarcerated individuals. The framework of the Norwegian prison system serves to rehabilitate incarcerated individuals to directly address recidivism. For example, while the largest Nordic prison houses around 350 incarcerated individuals, the majority of these prisons are relatively small and house around 100 incarcerated individuals. The philosophy behind the limited prison size is to maintain several active prisons in many different parts of the country, allowing incarcerated individuals to reside closer in proximity to their families and their home environment, unlike Vermont, who warehouses people 1,370 miles away. Consequently, Nordic incarcerated individuals can maintain their roots in their communities and family bonds while receiving as much rehabilitation services within the prison system. Nordic prison systems have two categories, open prisons and closed prisons. These categories are different in restrictiveness, where the typical incarcerated individual will first go to a closed, more restrictive prison where they will serve the majority of their sentence. Toward the end of their sentence, the incarcerated individual will be transferred to an open prison. That serves as a foundation of rehabilitation, allowing more freedoms, relaxed surroundings, fewer security measures, and more programs that are aimed at societal reintegration. In one of the prisons, creative cost-cutting measures led to increased socializing behaviors. These changes are designed to promote positive social interactions and independence. Barriers such as fences and walls are eliminated when possible. Most prisons allow incarcerated individuals to freely roam the grounds, lock their own doors, and earn in-town privileges. They also utilize technology as means for accounting for and tracking the location of incarcerated individuals. This level of surveillance has produced a safer environment and increases the socializing behaviors. The Nordic prison staff, the attitudes of staff, especially the prison guards, are thought to directly influence the success of the correctional rehabilitation programs and the successful reintegration of incarcerated individuals. After their release, the makeup of the prison guards within the prison is carefully analyzed to maximize the success of incarcerated individuals, where prisons employ guards who vary in age and gender in the level of education. Working as a prison guard is a desirable vocation, which is very competitive and selective in Nordic countries. Training includes 2 years of mentoring. That was almost 6 minutes. Yeah. Training includes 2 years of mentoring prior to independent supervision of incarcerated individuals, where trainees establish an understanding of punitive policies, political influences, and public perception that serves as the foundation for the connection between the structure of the system and the reform. When people like myself are segregated from society for years with no one to socialize with from my community, it is any wonder that criminal behavior is reinforced rather than positive behavior. The longer an offender is separated from society, the more difficult to return. The Norwegian model fights prison's negative effects by applying the principle of normality, utilizing members of the community to provide services for prisoners in sentencing offenders to shorter terms, according to Tara O'Neill at the AmericanNationForum.org. Studies have shown that people who lose their connections to the community may be more likely to engage in destructive behavior. High rates of incarceration also erode trust in the governmental institutions among people who believe they or others were unjustly imprisoned, and weaken the connection in communities that are vital to creating a sense of belonging. These consequences may in turn create a cycle of crime and of incarceration. People like me feel ostracized, and I've developed feelings of anger, frustration, and hostility against the broken system, which I fear may lead to more illegal activity. Shipping incarcerated individuals halfway across the country, warehousing them for profit, far away from their families and their community ties, without any resources to education or rehabilitation, bringing the total cost to our criminal justice system to 1.2 trillion with a T. Education gives somebody that's less fortunate locked up a sense of belonging to their community and a better chance to become a law-abiding citizen, which will reduce the recidivism rate that is currently at 70%. Education is important. You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. You teach a man to fish, you feed him for life.
I told you guys that guy is from everywhere. All right, now it's time for the fun part. Let's definitely have these last couple rebuttals and see who presented the strongest argument. Presenting the affirmative team's second rebuttal, timers 3 to 5 minutes. Hailing from Morrisville, Vermont, a recent high school graduate, hats off for that, currently enrolled in classes at Vermont's Community College with full intention to continue upon release. And he just wants to state that a fun fact is he is a Red Sox fanatic. And he is grateful for this momentous moment. Thank you. With that said, Mr. Terry Adams.
Hello, I'm Terry Adams. Glad to be here today. This isn't Norway. You're right. We do not need to be Norway to implement a judicial system formed for the people. The principles of the Nordic model are not specific to nationality, sex, or race. They are designed to help millions of people who have erred, people from every race, sex, nation, and ethnicity, people who suffer from poor mental health, drug addiction, and poverty. These same issues plague an American today, same issues I deal with. It would be naive to believe ideology would hinder rehabilitation. The real difference would be Americans accepting the need for change. Only Americans' hubris would believe their criminal justice system cannot be improved. Norway's small size makes it easy to build small facilities in many rural areas. Although the United States is a great deal bigger, private prison industry utilizes the same model. They build prisons in small towns, creating economic booms, providing gainful employment. Unlike Norway, private prisons only have one agenda: make money. When money is the only goal, it reduces any chance of a humane environment and making rehabilitation a non-factor. It is fair to say everything in America does come at a cost. These costs are not all equal, and saying the Norwegian model will cost too much is grossly misrepresenting what is actually an investment. This investment comes with statistical proof of success. What really does cost too much is to keep wasting billions of dollars a year with a true economic impact of 1.2 trillion for the AAF on the world's highest recidivism rate of 76.6% after 5 years, for Matt DeRose. Implementing the Norwegian model can be done gradually, helping spread the investment. As of now, multiple states like California, Oregon, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut have already started adopting some or all of the principles that guide the Nordic model in an attempt to reduce recidivism. MLK wrote in part from a jail cell in Birmingham, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." We are here today because there is a tragic injustice within the United States criminal justice system. There is no winning when it comes to any penal system. However, if implemented properly, reduced recidivism comes with rehabilitating people, because that's exactly what we are. We are all people. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Terry. And now, presenting the negative team's second rebuttal timers. He has the same 3 to 5 minutes. Hailing from Tampa, Florida, representing the Demon Deacons of Wake Forest, we have Mr. Nico Machado.
Can everyone hear me? Good. Once again, context and culture are everything here. To reiterate, Norway is a small, homogeneous nation with a prison population just over 3,000, not too much smaller than our very own student body. The United States, in stark contrast, houses 1.2 million inmates, approximately 1/5 of Norway's entire population. Our system is not just different, it's a completely different level of complexity as well. And we've already covered costs. The Norwegian model sounds wonderful until you look at the price. Currently, we spend $31,000 per incarcerated person annually. The Norwegian system asks for 3 times that amount. Another critical point is that even the Nordic model isn't the utopia it's marketed to be. Vanessa Barker, a sociology researcher, found in her analysis that these celebrated systems have their own problems. Sweden, the prime example for progressive justice, has been criticized by the UN Committee Against Torture for practices like extended pretrial detention and enforced isolation. Rehabilitation is crucial, but a complete overhaul of a system from a country with fundamentally different social structures, cultural attitudes, and economic realities is not just impractical, it's dangerous. Our opponents will argue about recidivism rates and humane treatment, but I ask those of you in support of this Norwegian system, how humane is a solution that cannot be sustainably or impartially implemented? How rehabilitative is a system that would collapse under its own financial weight, let alone logistic concerns? The United States doesn't need a complete overhaul in its prison system. We need targeted, intelligent reforms. The Center for Economic and Political Research identified that reducing the nonviolent offender incarceration rate by 1/2 could save $16.9 billion annually. That's real actionable change. Our path forward lies not in large, broad reforms, but in smart, context-specific reforms that respect both the complexity of our justice system and the nation's economy. One way in which we can do this is by better funding our education system. Brian Bell, a researcher for economic performance, found in his study that students who go to better funded schools are less likely to commit crime as a young adult, bleeding into early and later adulthood. If we put the money we would use for reforming prison systems into the education system, we can prevent the problem before it even starts. And no, this doesn't mean all incarcerations will dramatically decrease, but we could see a decrease in incarcerations that build over time, and we could save money that can later be used to focus on the rehabilitation of incarcerated people who need it. And we can still provide them with more resources with the money we still have for prisons. I would also like to address the topic of rehabilitation and bringing humanity back to the person. A major problem of the rehabilitation style of Norway's prison system is that it presupposes that the location of the prison is within a city. Norway's prison rehabilitation project is built upon the principle of normalcy, that the incarcerated person's life needs to be as similar as possible to life on the outside. Given that the majority of prisons in the US are located in rural lands, the principle of normalcy wouldn't apply well within the US. US prisons are usually 100 miles or more away from any city, meaning that the rehabilitation style will not work as it should. Incarcerated people won't have easy access to employment, and most aspects of an easy transition will not be in place, rendering the purpose of Norway's incarceration system virtually impossible within the US. Due to these stark differences in how prisons work and operate within the US, the Norwegian system will be incompatible if implemented in the US. I would also like to address the argument that funding prison systems can save money in the long haul by reducing recidivism rates, which will eventually save money for the government. While this proposed system may over a long period of time reduce recidivism rates, this problem still remains that more money than is already being used will be spent to work on said reforms. At the same time, we have seen with states like North Dakota and Oregon that these systems within the US are inconsistent and unreliable. We can't take gambles with taxpayer dollars that could be used for education, among other reforms, instead putting them into reforms that will save us moderate amounts of money decades down the road if the Norwegian system style works. The money we would save by funding education, especially in poor areas, would not only save us more money down the line by decreasing general incarceration rates, but would stop the problem where it's starting, which is poor education and toxic learning environments. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Machado. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's almost time to come to a close for today's debate and see who wins. But before we can get to that, we have to let these guys and these gals bring their strongest points home. What segment do we have for that? Our closing. Both teams will have 90 seconds. First up, from the Con-Tradictors, Mr. Rich Goyette.
Thanks again for this moment and this opportunity. I kept hearing that this system could never operate in the United States. However, it is already successful working in various states across the country and is at work right now in this moment. I keep hearing that our country would never accept change like this. However, I'm sure the same was said when women fought to vote, gay men and women fought to have rights, and schools were integrated. It's easy to say, lock them up, throw away the key, when you don't understand the harm that's being done. But 1.8 million incarcerated Americans do understand. The current system is failing. Offend, incarcerate, release, repeat. 70% recidivate within 3 years of release. A population has grown 400% in 40 years. Proves change needs to happen. The Norwegian model directly addresses the issue causing the increased incarceration in the US and solves them. While it may not address every issue, it has been proven to work overseas and is currently being successfully implemented in states across our country. The Norwegian model focuses on reintegration and rehabilitation with a humanized driver to its core. The goal is not to be Norway. The goal is to be better in America. Why not allow us to better ourselves and to become good neighbors? that contribute to our communities. Are we not going to attempt that? We're ready for change. Are you?
And now we'll hear the negative team's closing timers. He also has 90 seconds. Mr. Cole Wolf, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Am I audible? Wonderful. When thinking about whether to affirm or negate the resolution, you should remember what both of these teams agree on. Yes, the United States prison system needs realistic change. Yes, education is critical to reducing recidivism. Yes, culture is important to grapple with implementing social change. Given these shared terms, the negative offers the best solution. In the places where it's possible for states to allocate their budget towards reforming prisons, they ought to do so. This is the status quo, as we've seen in Colorado and New York, which is not something the affirmative team gets to take credit for. Furthermore, it is an impossibility for rural counties, which is the majority of individual counties in the United States, at a both funding and cultural level. Therefore, I must urge you to negate, as we continue to remind you, the United States isn't Norway. The affirmative team has claimed that this is a non-factor, but remember, implementing their model would be both prohibitively expensive and logistically impossible, as you heard in our first constructive. This is a 3 times funding increase. Let's get to the brass tacks. This is $30K to $90K per individual prisoner. This is impossible. This isn't even to mention the further increase in funding that they forwarded through things like telehealth, which would cost more funding as it would require adopting systems that we don't even have. In the United States, there are people who believe our current system isn't strong enough and needs to be tougher, especially for violent offenders like Anders. Remember, at the culture level, this debate is not about whether or not you think rehabilitation is better, but whether or not the average American thinks Anders deserves a parakeet. You should negate the resolution with the belief that we should focus on reforming our current system. Thank you for your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the speaking portion of today's event. Now, while we give the judges time to tally their opinions on the matter, I guess you could say, I'd like to first give our debaters from Vermont a round of applause. Now, I would also like to give that same applause to Wake Forest. I would be remiss if I did not thank all of you for tuning in and supporting this live stream. So give yourselves a round of applause. I also want to take definitely a big second to thank the administration here in Vermont Department of Corrections for allowing this to happen. This is definitely significant, and I believe that this is going to definitely take this prison in a new direction. So thank you so much. I would also like to again give support and thanks to the team members for National Prison Debate League and all of our volunteers for making this happen. So let's give us all one. And now, while the judges are tallying up, before I actually get into today's experiences and give people the opportunity to speak to what it is that you experienced, I would like to first bring up one of the contradictors from Vermont, Mr. Jesse. I would like you to give you the opportunity to share something with us. Unfortunately, we just want to give you the opportunity to speak to this. Thank you.
So one of the programs that we have here in Vermont is the Open Ears program. It is a peer-to-peer counseling service that we have. And I must admit, when I came to prison nearly 2 years ago, I was in a bad way. I had screwed up my life. I had screwed up my family's life. I had broken my marriage. And I was seriously considering hurting myself. And there were a few people that saw this and recognized it in me. Unfortunately, one of them, Mike Myers, who was on our team for a while, passed away earlier this week. So if it is all right with everybody, I would like to take a moment of silence for Mike and everybody that has not made it out of these walls. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for that, Jesse. And you know, there's a lot of guys like Mike that oftentimes are forgotten, but they touch our lives and allow us to transcend from, you know, perhaps the mistakes that we've made into the people that we're meant to be. So, you know, I want to just first and foremost thank Mike and send condolences to his family, and also just thank him so much, man, because we have Jesse here with us still, and that we appreciate. So thank you. Our hats go off to Mike and his family. With that said, I would like to actually open this up to the Wake Forest debaters and the contradictors. Maybe a couple of you guys or all you guys could take a quick moment in context. I know you're debaters, so you can do this. If you guys could just speak a little bit to your experience, what it's been like. I imagine that this is the first time for you guys from Wake Forest and also the first time for those incarcerated here in Vermont. So, you know, we'll start with Wake Forest. Does anybody want to step up and just kind of speak to their experience?
I'm going to quickly grab the mic here if I can. I just want to say thank you to the guys from Vermont. I was lucky enough to spend maybe 10 hours with them in the fall, kind of discussing this topic, going over some issues. We had some practice debates. But, you know, we talk about how educators are supposed to constantly get better. And as someone who's been teaching debate and advocacy for better parts of almost 30 years now, it's always looking for an opportunity for us to grow. But I just want to say thank you to the guys that I had time to spend with, because they helped me grow, changed my perspective, helped us think about, you know, how we can really build collaboration beyond walls, and sort of got some sparks going on here. And I hope that means that we can continue this process of education and collaboration. And in fact, there's already been some conversation to try to make that happen in the future. So I just wanted to say thank you. You know, bring in the effort, bring in the energy. You know, Shazam always coming with something funny and bringing it. We appreciate that too. And so wanted to just say thank you more than anything.
Thank you so much for that, Justin.
I don't know if anybody else from Wake here wants to jump in.
Anybody else from Wake want to speak? I mean,
All right.
You go first.
I just hope you all know we're really grateful to have had this opportunity today. It was something we were all really looking forward to. And I think a lot of us told our families and friends about it. And hopefully they'll get to watch this back and they'll laugh at the jabs that you guys had at us. There were some pretty good ones that were really memorable. And we're just really grateful to have had this opportunity.
thank you so much, Devin.
Yeah, no, I completely second that. We're super grateful to have the opportunity. One of my big things, like coming into college, is wanting to interact and talk with people who had, you know, different experiences than I did, people that I wouldn't normally get to interact with and communicate with. This is exactly that. So this has been a super valuable experience for me. I'm super appreciative of the work that you guys put in to make this happen, and I hope, you know, it's something that we can continue.
Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Just the second what Devon said, like, we were the second Coach Green emailed us, we were on. Like, we were still, like, we were so excited. And we had met who were like the incarcerated individuals a few months ago, and it was like we had a great like time. So we were excited to do it on like a larger scale. And we had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate them sentiments. Anybody else?
I'll just close it out as someone who's had an opportunity similar to this before my freshman year. I got a text from Jay Green 2 days ago that I would have the opportunity to do this again. Even on short notice, I couldn't describe how excited I was. Not just because conversations like this are important, but also just jumping at the chance to, you know, like my compatriots have said, have discussions with people that have different experiences than us. So again, thank you so much for facilitating this. It's been invaluable.
Thank you Appreciate that. Also, just thank you guys all for showing up. I mean, obviously it takes courage to step into the arena with some convicts and, so at the end of the day, it's all love and air hugs for everybody. With that said, I'll turn it over to the contradictors. Anybody want to say anything?
My name's Anthony Giordano. My name's Anthony Giordano. I work for the Department of Corrections. I've been with the department almost 17 years now. And I just wanted to really touch base with Justin and his team. We appreciate you working with us here. You guys did great. And I want to reach out, show some love to Dan and his team from the debate team there, and the guys, obviously the guys. Like, I can't emphasize the work that these individuals actually put into this, the time that they invested. We met almost on a daily, almost daily in the coffee shop to kind of work on notes and put things together. We met weekly with Dan and his team and Justin as well. So I just wanted to reach out and I just want to show that, Vermont is definitely taking strides in the right way here. We're trying to work with our population, bring outside communities in to kind of foster these type of opportunities. And I just want to again, thank you from the Vermont Department of Corrections for everybody's participating today.
Yes, thank you so much for that, Gio. We definitely appreciate everything that Vermont has done. And now as I slowly turn, I hope you guys can see these people.
Bring it down.
Keep going.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Turn it a little more. There, yep.
All right, guys. So first up, who wants to speak to their experience?
Hi, I'm Mike. Can't tell you how much we appreciate you guys doing this. So for us, right, the monotony of day-to-day life in jail is like, it weighs on you heavy. To have the opportunity to get out of a cell or a unit on a weekly basis to meet and push ourselves forward with like progressive new ideas to flex an intellectual muscle that we don't commonly get to flex while incarcerated has been an amazing experience. I know a lot of you guys spoke about like paradigm shifts and the ability to meet people that you're not commonly in contact with. And I can tell you that like firsthand every day that happens, what I thought incarceration was and the type of people I thought were incarcerated has changed entirely. But what a cool place we are. We're very lucky and blessed to be incarcerated in Vermont at Southern State, to have a community college program in here. We have a virtual reality welding vocational program, the National Prison Debate League here. People like Gio constantly volunteer opportunities, but like I think this is a trend for maybe even if we don't adopt the Norwegian model, like you guys said, to move incarceration forward in the country. I think that events like this, colleges like you guys interacting with us, is only going to further break down barriers and push both incarceration and society forward. I think we need more opportunities to build bridges and less opportunities to build walls. So thank you guys so much.
Amen to that. Anybody else?
I was gonna say plenty, but Mike hit it pretty much all on the head there, so. Well, I'll chime in. Justin, thank you. Incredible job coaching us, taking us from, I remember where we began, where we were at. I was totally like, it's very daunting. I was terrified, but look where we are now. Dan and his team, incredible work supporting us and going over everything. Thank you everyone, especially Wake Forest, for being here so we could truly enjoy this experience and hopefully it goes further. I talked to one of my peers and just, this is growth. And it doesn't matter what growth looks like. If it's a small growth, we're going to get there. So thank you guys.
It's the man from everywhere coming to a neighborhood near you.
My aunt and uncle live in Arlington, so watch out. I just want to say that you guys at Wake Forest inspired me because I just signed up for college, and the administration staff know here that I've been in 8 years and about 3.5 of it has been in segregation for being a knucklehead. So I just want to thank Miss Merrill and Gio for giving me the opportunity and to do this debate and be a part of something for the greater cause. And I think that besides the debate, that in America, I know politics is a tough thing to talk about, but if you look at Donald Trump and all the people that got pardoned from jail, what's the head guy, Eurico? I forget his name. He was of the Proud Boys, I believe it was. And he talks about how he was in the jail and he got shipped around 40 different times within a couple of years. And I think debates like this is going to show like people like Donald Trump and people who've been incarcerated that have never been to jail, that aren't criminals, like me, you know, just saying. It goes to show that, you know, I think there's gonna be a big, down the road, there's gonna be a greater cause and more people are gonna speak up about the injustices and things that need to change in the prisons. That's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
First of all, Daniel, thank you for putting this all together. Justin, all the partners, my teachers, Gio for being there every day, everybody here. I essentially came here with a seventh grade education. Since I've been here, I've got my high school diploma.
Amen.
College classes. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm in my right head spot. Even though I'm still incarcerated, I feel like I'm going somewhere in life. And you are.
You are. Amen, bro.
And education is the key to all this. Thank you.
All right, so I would be remiss if I did not introduce the superintendent. Yes, we're gonna let the superintendent of the Vermont Department of Corrections over here speak before you, Ed, but after that, we will give it to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I just want, my name is Michaela Merrill. I'm superintendent at Southern State Correctional Facility. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who participated and supported this. And thank you, Dan, for reaching out to my commissioner and making this happen. I really hope to see this program expand in the future so we can have people come in and spend more time on site. And this is really the direction that the department is going in. And this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We all set?
Yes, we are all set. So I'm going to turn it over to the Chief Judge, Mr. Ed Panetta, so he can give off his results.
Well, first, I want to thank everybody for a really informative and entertaining hour and a half. I learned a lot, and people performed very, very well. It was a very exciting debate. And I'm going to give you the 3 scores that will give you how close the debate was. I voted for the negative, and I scored the debate 119 for the negative and 117 for the affirmative. I thought it was very close, and we could talk about this in more detail. My good friend Vincent Lee voted for the affirmative, and he scored the debate 104.5 for the affirmative and 97.5 for the negative. And my other good friend, Dr. Malson, voted for the affirmative as well, with a score of 104.5 to 104, which kind of describes how, as a collective, we thought that this debate played out. It was entertaining, close, informative, and a lot of fun, and we thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just present this to you guys, man. Let you guys come up here and get some pictures with this. This is nice. This is for you. First place to the Con-Tradictors, Vermont versus Wake Forest University 2025 inaugural event. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. That is gorgeous.
Best thing we can do.
Thank you. Come on.
So, everybody.
Everybody. Everybody.
I'm gonna take a picture after. I just gotta close this out. All right.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you all for tuning in. This was another amazing iteration. And again, it shows what decarcerating minds in action looks like. It's not that hard. You just got to get people to believe in change and then implement it. And that's what you saw in action. Thank you so much to Wake Forest University for, again, always being great partners, for bringing that great energy and adapting to our format, which I know is also something all collegiate teams do for the NPDL, our unique 5-on-5 format. Next Friday, the 28th at 1:00 p.m. Stay tuned for links on our website and social feeds, because we'll be doing it again in Ohio. We'll have a debate between our team in Ohio, Liberation Aloud, and Indiana University. And so that's going to be our next iteration. So stay tuned and thank you again for supporting our work in decarcerating minds across the world. Thank you so much for our judges as well for joining us, Ed, Michaela, and Mr. Lee. Thank you so much.